So I got myself into just a little bit of a project here. This is a Hornsby era Rivarossi FEF-3 Northern locomotive. This is number 840, not 844, but 840. And it probably will become 844 at some point. This one has the oil tender. See, there's the inside of what one of these beasts looks like. The motor, and this is a DCC ready model. Got this for a pretty good price on eBay. Right now it looks pretty much like the real 844 actually. Funny that, huh? Talk about realism in model trains. It's kind of a neat thing that Hornby, I don't know, maybe they didn't do this or maybe one of the previous owners did, but you can see all the bearing caps are silver, and so is the caps on the trailing trucks. They look to me like they're factory painted. They don't look hand painted to me, but I could be wrong about that. So the project here is, as you can see, I got the tender taken apart, and it's going to be to install a TCS WOW sound decoder in this thing. That's right. This is a heavy steam decoder with a 9-pin plug on it. And got the speaker over here. It's going to be in there. This is a pretty nice big speaker right here. I think that'll work pretty good. We'll find out. And I've cut this little white foam board out here to kind of act as a little bit of a sealant, gasket, whatever you call it. So when I slip this in the shell, it'll hopefully seal up pretty good there, at least enough. This speaker will sit about right in here somewhere. And so yeah, we'll see how that sounds once I get this all complete. Might not be a good idea, but who knows. It's about the only place I can put one. And one of the unique things about this particular version of the Northern is that it has pickups on the tender right there. It's got contacts touching each one of those wheels right there, so that's a nice touch that they did with that. And the other nice touch is at the ends, Hornsby, they designed this specifically so that you could add a sound decoder to this, and as such they made it so that the ends just pop right off, no glue. So there's the back side of it right there. And it's got pretty good detail. This camera would focus. There we go. It's got good detail. I think the FEF-3s, the Northerns, are the best models that Rivarossi made, I think. Even back to the AHM days, these have always been really nice locomotives as far as I'm concerned. And one thing that's really nice about these is that all the handrails are metal on these things, which is kind of neat. It's a detail that you don't see too often. And all the piping detail up here along the smoke box is metal piping is a metal. It's bent wire, but it's metal. And along the walk there, that's all metal too. And the nice thing about these is that they have a what did I do with the front? Oh, the front. I got the front gluing because one of the marker lights got kind of bent in shipping, so I'm gluing it back down. But they have a actual brass bell on them, so I think that's pretty nice too. So one of the things I've been wrestling with on this, and I think I might have a little bit of a plan, is you see this thing's already wired to pick up the power from the trucks there, the rear wheels on the centipede here, and there is a bulb that mounts to the weight, goes in the tender. But the problem is I need to get the decoder installed in the tender as well, and this is where this particular plug came in handy, because I thought that I could probably just cut a hole down here and glue this in place, and then I've got another 9-pin connector right here, pigtail, I could run up under the cab like this one's done right here, and The wire length is just about enough to do it. And then I've got a 9-pin or an 8-pin plug that I could solder onto these wires and be able to plug it in right here to where a mobile decoder would go, and fish the wires down along here, down the bottom, and out here. Well, the problem though is that the way they did this is that they've got a hole drilled right there for the existing wires to go through, which means I'd have to drill another hole, and so that's going to have to be done either way, unfortunately. So the trick is which way do I wire this, because if I use the 9-pin, I'm going to have a lot more wires that I have to fish through there, not to mention I have to paint these black too. So I think the better option is actually going to be to pull power from the tender back here, from the pickups on the tender, and there's a solder point here, and then a screw goes up on the back side over here, goes into the weight, and then the circuit board for the light back here screws into that, and that provides the other half of the power pickup. And there's a wire that runs back to this connector right here. In fact, here's the circuit board right here. You can see how that's done, and one of those is for the light and the other one is for the power pickup. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this decoder. I'm going to have to cut the plug off. I'm going to tie this decoder into the power pickup back here. The speaker wire is going to run directly to the speaker in here, so that's easy. And then the only other two things I really need off of this is the motor, the 2 wires for the motor, and the 2 wires for the headlight. And that would only leave me with 4 wires to have to run into the boiler section up here. And I'll probably solder the motor wires onto the motor itself. I haven't decided. I might run them back to where the motor wires are soldered onto this circuit board now. And then the other 2 the wires for the headlight, I might solder onto here as well, and that'll be pretty easy to get that all working. They say they use an awfully tiny light bulb for that headlight. So that's kind of the plan right now. So what I need to do though is I got to get a connector for this, and I'm going to look around at some laptops, but something like this might work, although it's an awfully small wire. I'm not sure if I want to use this for the motor or not, but this is kind of an idea. This came off of a laptop. This is a speaker assembly. So I'd only need to get a circuit board or a partial chunk of the circuit board off of a laptop that has this connector and glue it in down here. And one of the reasons that I'm going this route is because this 9-pin plug right here, it makes an awfully tight fit in here. And pulling it back out, what I'm afraid of is this thing breaking out of the tender shell back here, or getting pushed in when you try to plug it back in. And so that's kind of why I'm going the other way. Plus it's only 4 wires if I do it the other way. As far as the light for the backup light goes, you know, again, this is on a circuit board, so I can just wire right directly into that if I want to. So I've got plenty of wire that I can use to extend the wires right here. On hindsight, I probably should have got the other version of this that had the longer wires and not the 9-pin. But I thought this was going to work out better than it did. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now with it. So probably we'll come back in another day or so here and see what kind of progress I'm making on this thing. So here's where I am right now in this little hobbled together project here. Wired in a decoder to the circuit board back here. The black and red wires run up to the connector up here, and that is the power connector that feeds to the driving trucks as well up here to the main circuit board in the shell. So I've got that done, and the yellow wires for the reverse light right here, and the blue wire is the common wire for the lighting right there. So that's all wired into the decoder. And what I did with the decoder is there's actually a warning, a very large lettering warning in the manual about mounting this to something metal, and the weight of the tender works just fine for that, to absorb the heat that this thing supposedly puts out. I went a step further on that, and I put an adhesive backed thermal pad down here, and went ahead and secured it with some electrical tape. Also wrapped the connector in electrical tape there to hold it in place. The 9-pin harness that I had, plugged that in, and that's what's soldered here. I've only got one wire left, surprisingly. Well, not counting the two. These there's a purple or a pink and a brown wire that I taped up down in here, and these are on-off only. So this would probably work pretty good for smoking it. That's probably what the intention is, although the manual doesn't actually say that. And I got the speaker super glued to the weight right here. That seems to be working pretty good. And the speaker terminals are soldered on there. So what I did is I added another connector down here at the bottom of the front of the tender here. So the blue wire here, I'm going to have to check and see when it gets to the circuit board up in the boiler section right there, if it's actually is indeed the common blue wire for the decoder when you put a mobile decoder in there, if that is the way it is. If not, I'll just move it to where it needs to be. So that's what that one is. And then the white wire is the front headlight. The green wire is one of the other lighting options. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the gray and the red wire for the motor. So what I'm going to do is I've got a harness here somewhere. Here it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the sheathing off of this, and this will plug into that, and then I'm going to cut this down to proper length. I'm going to run this under the cab. I'm going to have to drill a hole up in here just like the other factory wire has a hole in it there. Run that up, and two of these wires are going to be wired directly to the motor, and the other two I'm just going to run up to the circuit board here for the lights and stuff like that. I could run these wires all the way down, but the thing is that there's only room enough in this weight right here for the wires that are already going through here, so there's not much left there for me to squeeze in there, so I may have to run one wire or two across the side here and then electrical tape it up to hold it in place. So that won't be a big deal if that has to be done. But so far I think we're pretty much done with the wiring portion of the tender, so I can actually put this back together and set it on the track and do a sound test on it without having to connect it into that boiler section, because it's getting power directly from the tender wheels themselves here, so that'll work. The extra lighting option, what I'm going to do is I've got some extra bulbs. I'm going to make this a functional Mars light, and you can see that it's transparent, that plastic red lens there. You can see the light shines through it there. So I'm going to put a light behind that and actually make that a functional Mars light. I think that'll turn out pretty cool. So I'm going to get this thing put back together, and we'll come back after that, and we'll do a sound test on it. I'm kind of curious to see how this sounds. The idea here is that the shell here for the tender will act as a bass speaker sort of thing going on here. So hopefully that will work. It'll act as an enclosure to make it a little bit more bassy, and that's the purpose of this, is to try to seal off as much as I can. There'll be about this much room in front of the speaker when it's all said and done, so it'll be a little bit muffled because of the front being put back on here, but we'll see how it works. I'm not sure. If this doesn't work, I may have to rethink this a little bit, because one of the other options that I wanted to do was to actually run, put a little speaker right up in here, just set it right on top of here, something small, something that'll fit under the cover right here, and might be a second speaker to amplify the high sounds like the bell and give the whistle a little bit more of a high-end sound to it, a high-end frequency sound to it there, a little bit more treble going on there, so that should help that sound a little bit better. But that's just kind of more of a thing of, well, if this doesn't work too good, then that might be a second option. But I'm going to have to think about this wiring here if I do that, and I may have to sacrifice something here. I'm not sure yet, so might have to go to a different connector. I really hope not, but I'm going to get this together and we'll find out here. Okay, so here we go, the big test. Let's turn this sucker on. Wow, it actually works. Move this a little bit closer here. Looks kind of funny right now, but that's okay. Okay, the bell sounds pretty good. Keeps going for a little while there. Not the right whistle, but sounds really good though, I gotta say. That's F4. That must be a grate crossing. There's F6. So let's go ahead and well, let's check out the headlight function here. Turn that on. You can hear the dynamo spin up. And we definitely got light. That's forward. That's reverse. Sweet. Okay. See how this thing sounds when we accelerate here. And that's 20 speed steps right there. See, it's accelerating slowly. Man, that sounds a lot better than Tsunami. Of course, it might be the speaker. I don't have the rear on right now, obviously, so. Now we're down to 0. And the other thing too is this particular decoder has the keep alive function in it, so watch this. Look, mommy, no power! And it's still decelerating. I'm going to say that lasts for quite a while. See, I got this decoder on eBay for about 70 bucks. Oh man, those things are... I was gonna say something, but no. They are a real... That centipede is a real pain in the butt to get back on there. Alright, so that's a successful test, so I'm going to close the shell up here and we'll see how it sounds at that point. Alright, so let's see how this goes here. That's still pretty loud. That's kind of weird. Okay. Well, it doesn't sound too bad to me, but I might have to, I don't know, I might have to find a way to cut a hole up here or something to get more sound out of that. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. It's a good thing those things don't glue back on, because they're just the kind of trials and errors here. And the light's working though. Light's working quite nicely there. There we go. So, yeah, a little bit more tweaking here. I'll see what I can come up with. But so far, I think we got the electrical bugs worked out anyway. Alright, I think I've got it here. My idea, I think, worked. Drilled some holes down there to let the sound out. That seems to actually be working very good, although it obviously directs the sound a little bit down towards the track, but it sure does sound a heck of a lot better than it did. God, these centipedes are a pain in the freaking butt, man. Trying to keep this clean, but dang. There we go. Man, what a pain in the butt that thing is. Sometimes I have to reset this thing when I set it back on the track, but nope. That's much better. Man, that is a really good sound. Hear the dynamo? Light still works, that's good. You can hear the reverse gear kicking in. I don't know if that's shoveling coal or if that's a water injector or what that sound is. I'm going to have to look that up, but let's just see how this sounds when I accelerate now. I'm going to do about 30 speed steps here. Of course, this is all default programming. I haven't reprogrammed anything, and I'm just trying to make sure this thing works. Then I'll start looking at adjusting it later on here. Alright, so if I've done my wiring properly to the connector up here when I plug it into the boiler section, it should work. I think we'll call this a success for right now. I don't think there's any reason why I can't put the front truck back on there. And yeah, so I think this part of it's done. This was the important part. The other side will be easy to do, I think. So except for drilling that hole, that's going to be tricky. But other than that, that'll be a piece of cake. So man, that thing sounds so good.
Reading 6 chime. Nickel Plate Road 765's whistle.
That's pretty cool.
Reading 6 chime. Reading Pacific G2. Wabash 3 chime.
It's pretty close to the big boy.
Baltimore and Ohio 3 chime.
Wow.
Pennsylvania Railroad K4. Norfolk and Western, single chime, long bell.
Wow. No, that doesn't sound any different.
Lunkenheimer 3 chime. Unknown whistle 1.
Huh?
Lunkenheimer single note.
Wow, this thing's got a lot of different options.
Unknown whistle 2. Unknown whistle 3. Union Pacific 3 chime Hancock.
There we go. Oh yeah. Let's try this one. Okay.
Southern 6 chime.
That's definitely not right.
Wabash 6 chime.
Wow.
Norfolk and Western single chime short bell.
Oh, that sounds funny.
Great Northern 5 chime. Nathan K5LA horn.
Wow.
Alamo, Michigan plant whistle. Pennsylvania Railroad 3 chime.
I think we already heard that one.
Kingsley 4 chime. Reading 6 chime.
I think we heard that one too.
Nickel Plate Road 765
All right, now they're repeating.
whistle.
Well, that's interesting. Now I'm just goofing around here. I gotta get back to it. The wiring for phase 2 of this project is complete, at least I think so. Haven't tested it yet. So I've got the wires ran up under here, and had to remove this little piece right here, and I cut a little chunk out of that right there. You can see that's what they did at the factory to run those wires up there, so I just cut one for myself there. And this piece was actually kind of glued in there a little bit. One of the ends, you can see a little bit of glue somewhere here. Yeah, there it is right there. So, but it broke off fairly easily. So I've got this wired up. I got the motor wires ran directly to the motor here, and I removed the wires that were going to it. I was debating on just soldering the wires from the plug all the way up to the board here where the motor wires had ran, but I figured that the wires from this point to the motor were a little bit thinner. They were thin like this, and I figured that added just a little bit more resistance, plus the length and stuff. I didn't want to have too much resistance in the wiring. I don't want to burn the motor up. I don't know if that could happen, but that's why I did it that way. So, and then I got my headlight and the Mars light up here, and I rewired this just a little bit. I soldered the headlight and the Mars light to a couple terminals up here, and then moved the wiring around. One of the headlights was soldered to that already, and I moved the other end directly to that black wire that goes into this plug right here, which is the blue wire coming out of the decoder. So common ground there. I wired both the headlight and the Mars light to that one terminal, and then put the Mars light on, I think, the red wire, and the headlight on the orange wire that's coming out of this plug. So that's where we're at right now with that, and I guess we'll give this thing a test. Hopefully if I've done everything properly and I remembered how I wired that plug there, this should all work. Well, so far so good. I only have one, maybe two snags here, but it is running. One of those snags is the headlight's not working, and it actually was working for a second. It didn't burn out, but you notice when I moved the wire a little bit, and of course it's not doing it now, but when I'd move the wire, it would light up for a second, so there must be a break in the wire somewhere there. So unfortunately I'm going to have to replace that. The other one that I used as a Mars light, I'm going to have to see what the function is for that, because I'm not seeing it come on. I thought I saw it flash on for a second when I first turned it on, or first put power to turn the DCC controller on, but so either that was a flash of it burning out, or that was this light down here. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check that out. But so far, I think I've got everything working other than that headlight. Sure does have a heck of a lot of momentum now. Sucker just kind of keeps on going. Yeah, just a little bit more fine-tuning here, I guess. Okay, I finally got the Mars light thing figured out. Apparently TCS WOW decoders are a little bit different when it comes to their sound and lighting functions. The lighting functions share the same buttons as the sound functions, so it's a bit of a pain in the butt, and it's kind of confusing, and I don't really understand why they did that. But anyway, you gotta scroll through the F8 button and select between light and sound mode, and that switches your function keys to function for only sound or only lighting. There is no, both functions don't operate together, they are independent. So you have to go into the sound functions to do your sounds, and which takes you out of the lighting, and I don't really care for that. And according to the manual, remapping, you cannot remap the lighting function to a sound function button. So that's just what the manual tells me anyway. So that's this has been an interesting experience here. I'm not entirely certain that I'm quite happy with the way TCS did this, but this is one of those things when you get used to the way Tsunami decoders work, somebody else comes out with a different decoder, it's a completely different world. I don't remember being this confused with the MRC decoder that I did a couple years ago, but anyway, you can see that the Mars light is working now. The headlight, I need to change the resistor on it. That's a little too dim. I used a 390 ohm resistor on that, and that's a little bit too heavy of a resistor. I need to bump that down to about a 220, 270 probably to get it up to its full brightness. It's only a 3 or 3.3 volt bulb, so that resistor was the only one I could find at the moment, so I'm going to have to search around some more. The other thing, let me switch this back to sound mode.
Sound mode active.
Okay. So the one other thing I don't like about it is that some of the sounds are really loud and some of them aren't. You can hear the, I guess that's coal shoveling. I'm not sure. I haven't looked all that stuff up yet. But I'll give you an example here. There's the bell, and that's pretty good. I actually had to drill. I drilled 3 holes in the bottom of this in the front, and I also went ahead and drilled 4 in the back as well, because, well, I'll show you in a minute. So we do the whistle here, and that's sufficiently loud, but it's the chuff that's kind of weak. And the steam releases per chuff there. I'd like that to be a little bit louder. Now you say, well, go in there and raise the volume. I have. I've raised the global volume, the master volume. There's called 2 things in this manual. And I've also went in and specifically raised the volume for the chuffing, and that's as loud as I can get it. It could be the speaker, but a lot of the other sounds are pretty loud, especially this random steam release. That thing, I can hear it clear across the house. So It's the nitpick of mine. It's not a big deal, but yeah, so making progress, though, making progress. So I think at this point I'm going to go ahead and get the shell back on. I've already washed it, and the next thing I need to do is, of course, that it means getting everything, the cow catcher and stuff like that, put back on. I need to paint the wires back here, and I think that's about all we've got left to do. I got to change that resistor too. I can't forget to do that. But so far, this is going pretty good. So this is day 3 or 4 now. Yeah. And the other thing too is when I shut the controller off, it's amazing how long those capacitors last. It's completely out. It just finally shut off. So yeah, that's interesting anyway. All right, so here we go. The Maiden Voyage. See, I got the Mars light going. It's not particularly bright through that red diffuser there, but it's you can see it.